I'm working on a 2003 Kia Spectra. The headlights don't work and the turn signals don't work. I've done a little research on the internet, and what other people have done to fix this problem is replace this mechanism. It entails taking off the entire steering wheel and opening up the steering column a little bit. Before I take apart the steering wheel, or take the steering wheel off and take apart the steering column, I'm going to take a look at a few simple possibilities just to make sure I don't do a lot more work than is necessary. So I'm going to check the fuse and just kind of fish around under the dash. So I'm going to turn on the key and see what goes on with the blinkers, and we'll go from there. That's interesting. The blinkers are working now. Okay, now they stopped. Okay, this is a good clue. I'm going to bang on the... I'm going to find the relay for the blinkers and kind of tap on it next time they stop. I turned on the turn signal again. It blinked a few times before it went out, and before it stopped blinking, I was able to find the relay. It makes noise and you can feel it. And then after it stopped blinking, I tapped on it and it started blinking again. So it started to look like a bad relay. Now let's take a look and see what's going on with the headlights. I found a fuse box under the dash right here by the kick panel. I'm reading what fuses are in there. Nothing about the headlights, so let's try under the hood. I found what's called Fuse and Relay Center. So let's see what we have here. Okay, nothing with the headlight switch off. Now I'll turn the switch on and see if we get some power over here. I didn't get any power at that fuse at all for the, it said it was a headlight fuse. So I'm going to test the headlight and see what's happening now. No headlight. I get this running light. When I try and go back and forth between high beam and low beam, nothing, but when I lift up to flash the high beams, I get the high beams. Usually in the process of elimination, if the high beam and the low beam don't work under normal operation, and then the high beam works when I lift up on the lever to flash the high beams, it seems to me that that is the switch that's bad in the car. And because the high beam works if you can flash the high beam, it just doesn't turn on normally in the normal operating position. So I'm going to take this switch out, and I'm going to also replace the turn signal relay, which also seems to be bad. Before I attempt to take the steering wheel off, I'm going to disconnect the battery because there's an airbag in the steering wheel, and I want to make sure that that has been completely disabled. I did some research online, and it's recommended after you disconnect the battery to wait at least 10 minutes before working on the airbag system. The next step is I'm going to remove the airbag and the steering wheel. I want to center the steering wheel so that I can put it back exactly where I took it off. There are 4 10mm bolts on the back of the steering wheel corresponding to these 4 connections to the wheel itself. They're really easy to access.
There are some connectors that come apart. There's the airbag. Okay, so the wheel is nicely centered. Now I just need to loosen this bolt, this nut. Sometimes steering wheels require a puller, but this one came off pretty easily. Steering wheel pullers are readily available to rent for free at a local parts store. Looks like somebody's already tried to gain access to this because this was completely unscrewed already. They're just a few screws from underneath. This is the piece that's coming out. It looks a little bit intimidating and has the appearance that it could be a daunting task. But in actuality, they're just 3 screws and a few connectors. That's all it is. So this is the one I bought used at the junkyard for $13. So before I take out these 3 screws, I'm going to remove this lower cover so I can get access to the plug so I can unplug it. It's a couple of Phillips screws and then it just pulls right off. This came off pretty easily. There was a screw in the top right corner, the lower right corner. Over here on the side there was a 3rd screw, and a couple of clips, and it was pulled right off. Now bend this thing back a little bit, and here are these connections that need to be removed. Each one has a plastic tab, and each one is different, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. Okay, this one is on this other end. There's a push button on this one. I'll try and show it with this, pushing it with the screwdriver. See how that slides to release? Okay, now all the wires are disconnected, and it's just a matter of taking out the 3 screws. You can see 1, 2, 3. Okay, I loosened all 3 screws. There it is. That's the old one. Here's the new one.
These were at the bottom when I took it off, so I'm just putting them back at the bottom. Just like the other one. So I assume that there's a hole in the steering wheel, so that's why these have to go at the bottom to line up with the steering wheel orientation. Just going to put the 3 screws back. This is the last screw. Now the connections. They should snap in. These 2 underneath. Okay, and this holder to kind of tuck the wires up. That's all there is to it. Before I put this cover back on, I'm going to install the new blinker relay. This is the relay. There's a push button release for the connection. Here's the connection right here. I'm just going to push that release, pull the connection out, and there's a metal bracket that it just slides off of, and so I'll do that now. I slid it off of the metal bracket. You can see these 2 slots. This slides off the metal bracket. Now let's disconnect it. Okay, now it's disconnected. Put the new one on. Okay, and I'll just slide it back on the bracket. Okay, so there's an access area in the steering wheel for these connections. Now I just want to line up the steering wheel where it was before. That looks just right. I need to tighten up this nut. Oops, I'm glad that wasn't the windshield. Okay. Now the airbag. Okay, now we just need to reconnect the airbag. The reason I'm putting the steering wheel on before all the covers is I want to test it and make sure it works before I put the covers on. This is the last bolt. I'm just getting all these started before tightening them up. I connected all the bolts for the airbag. Now I'm going to reconnect the battery connection and see if the blinkers and the headlights work properly now. Okay, everything looks good. High beams, low beams, and the blinkers work.